We cannot ignore the fact that Bitcoin is about to close a very ugly weekly and monthly candle. And in today's video, I'd like to talk about this and what happens after, as well as the local time frame. So, taking a look at the weekly chart for Bitcoin, guys, take a look at this. We are currently below $74,000. The weekly candle closes in a few hours from when I'm publishing this video, but we should be expecting some very interesting price action this week. As you know, if you've been watching the channel, I have been shorting Bitcoin for quite some time, and I've added to my position on the way down. I actually took a little bit more profits recently on my Bitcoin short, realizing around $350,000 on this trade. Unrealized gains are currently sitting at just over $100,000 as I'm recording this video, and I'm hoping that this trade can turn into at least a $500,000 trade. If you want to follow how I've been operating in terms of trading this market, please remember you do have the first link in the description down below. It's where I share all of my own personal trades and my overall market analysis. I am a swing trader, so I don't enter a ton of positions, but if you want to see what I'm doing in this market for free, you have the first link in the description down below. If you DM me the keyword CBM on Telegram, you'll get access to that group for free. So Bitcoin is currently below some major levels. The first level that I want you to pay attention to is the bull market support band, and we are currently back testing it as resistance. This is not good for Bitcoin. However, more locally, before there is likely to be some more dumpage for Bitcoin, I am eyeing a couple of key levels for a potential bounce. Now, those levels are very obvious, in my opinion at least. We have the anchored VWAP from the 60K low. This typically acts as support for a major pivot. This is this blue line over here, which is found at around $71,750. And we like to add confluence to these levels. And a potential confluence would be the fact that if we take a Fibonacci from the 65K pivot low, where we dropped below the value area low of this range, to the high, it coincides with the golden pocket. So Bitcoin can potentially get a bounce from around this zone if we are to head into that zone over the course of this week. Now, on top of this, there is another level that I am paying attention to, which is right below that level for Bitcoin, and that is actually a daily level where you can see right at around $70,700, we got a great reaction for Bitcoin, which effectively continued its rally, and we have the overall trend line. Now, I'm not one to necessarily draw trend lines like we're seeing here, but when it does mark a confluence on the charts, I have to point it out. So between $70,700 up to around $71,700 could be a very interesting level for Bitcoin to get a more significant bounce in this market. Now, in my opinion, based on what I'm seeing here, I don't think that this bounce, if it is to even occur, would send Bitcoin back above the highs. So far, this structure is very bearish, and we know that typically in bear markets, Bitcoin can move lower over the course of the summer, marking some kind of low in June. So at this point in time, I will continue to remain in my existing Bitcoin short as I continue to take profits on the way down. Now, I also entered another short here on weeks where you can see that I've secured just under $25,000 on this trade, unrealized sitting at around $13,000. This trade was also shared within my free group that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Guys, remember, that's the first link in the description down below if you want to join. Look, I think that Bitcoin will give us some better opportunities over the course of this year to buy. The structure is still very much bearish, and as I started off this video with, the monthly candle looks absolutely awful. You can see that we had a move up into this previous range, and as I said, acceptance into this range would be very bullish for crypto, but we got an immediate retrace, and it now looks like Bitcoin wants to trend lower. So more locally, while I am looking for a potential long in this market, my higher time frame analysis remains exactly the same in the sense of I still think Bitcoin is going lower. And it honestly makes sense because never in Bitcoin's bear market history have we had 3 green monthly candles in a row. And we were looking like we were going to line up for that However, it wasn't the case, and right now this monthly candle will likely end in the red, which is typical bear market price action. You can see here that back in 2022, we got the exact same scenario, two green monthly candles in a row, and then the next one was red, and we dropped further and further. I ultimately think that this is something we should be expecting over the next few months. Now, some of you again will say, but Mathieu, the stock market continues to make an all-time high. And yes, this has been seen before in Bitcoin bear markets. Stocks can continue to climb up the wall of worry, but because Bitcoin is the riskiest of assets, it typically underperforms in a bear market. But the good news is that when the good times come again, I think Bitcoin will outperform to the upside. And before we move on to the news for this quick video update, I wanted to talk about why I'm also considering taking a small long position at around this zone. Not only do we have a lot of confluence here, but if we take a look at the overall liquidity, there is some short leverage piling into the market. Now, this is the one-day chart where there is technically more cumulative long liquidation leverage, but the more that we zoom out, the more clear that it becomes that there are a lot of shorts in this market. So a great scenario from my perspective would be for Bitcoin to drop to below the level that I highlighted right around $70,700, grab all of this downside liquidity from the 7-day time frame perspective, from the 30-day time frame perspective, and from the 90-day time frame perspective. You can see that most of it is piled right down to the 70K level, and then we can potentially get a bounce targeting some of that upside liquidity. Now, I know this might sound confusing to you. Liquidity is not the only thing that I add to my analysis. In fact, it's just a small portion of it, and this adds confluence to what I'm currently seeing on the charts. I think Bitcoin can get a bounce, and when it does, it will likely be short-lived before we go ahead and roll over, but I will look to trade that price action regardless. And back to the higher time frames, I think Bitcoin will likely continue its trajectory to the downside because you can still see that we're getting continuous selling from the Coinbase side of things. We've pointed this out on the channel time and time again. It's nothing but a sea of red. The spot ETFs continue to see net outflows day after day after day. Now, something that we should discuss briefly in this video is that there was some news that Iran and the US were going to have a ceasefire for 90 days, and I haven't really been looking into this that much because it seems like there's a lot of flip-flopping, but at this point in time, despite the fact that Iran has been rejecting all previous proposals over nuclear issues, it seems like Trump has sent a new and even tougher proposal with harder demands designed to speed up the process by putting more pressure on Iran to accept. President Trump has also been frustrated, supposedly, with how long Iran has taken to respond to US proposals and requests, mainly because Iran is rejecting Trump's daily requests, which are sent almost hourly through various channels to finally accept the deal framework. So we're in a little bit of a situation here because even with Trump trying to tighten the clauses on the nuclear program, it doesn't seem like Iran is in any hurry. So we'll have to see how this develops. Overall, though, structurally, Bitcoin is still in a bear market, and some of you disagree with me. That's totally fine. But as I've shared on the channel before, I have some exposure from Bitcoin from the previous bear markets, and I will simply look to accumulate if we are to head lower as well. Locally, though, I'm going to look to trade this price action and make as much money in this market as possible on the way down, playing the bounces, playing the shorts. This way, in the bear market, I can accumulate as much as possible when we start to hit some more attractive levels. And to wrap up today's quick video, we should be getting a pretty intense labor market week. The data that's coming out is as such. The May ISM manufacturing PMI data on Monday, April JOLTS job opening data on Tuesday, the May ISM non-manufacturing PMI data on Wednesday, initial jobless claims data on Thursday, with the overall May jobs report on Friday, with a total of 7 Fed speakers over the course of this week. So pay attention to these levels that I highlighted on the Bitcoin chart. I will look to potentially play the bounce, but I have to be honest, guys, any longs that I take on Bitcoin is likely going to be way less capital than what you're seeing here with my Bitcoin shorts, because overall on a higher time frame, I still firmly believe that Bitcoin will be headed lower over the course of the summer and over the course of this year. If you enjoyed the content, as always, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. And remember, if you want to join my group where I share all of my own trade ideas and my overall market analysis, you have that first link in the description down below. And I'll see you tomorrow for a very long live stream. See you then.